right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Shivi. I am a product manager at LinkedIn Learning. Today with me, I have Elena Verna, everything growth, head of growth and Amplitude, and someone that I hugely admire. Dated back to the days of when I joined Reforge sessions. So, Elena, we're so grateful to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So for folks who are joining us today, please introduce yourself. Drop in the chats where you are joining us from. This is part of LinkedIn Learning's product management learning series, live streaming events, where we interview industry thought leaders as well as practitioners about their product career journey and best practices and lessons learned along the way to inspire current as well as aspiring PM like you to level up your product career. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter in the event description to stay in tune for future events, as well as recap of past events. So let's see where folks are joining us from. We have Andrew from Zion National Park, Navid from Dallas, Texas, someone from Nigeria, wow, Argentina, Vancouver, Portland, India, Seattle, Mania, wow. Elena, your fans are global. You have a global community of followers and folks that are, eager to learn from you. And it's Friday, and we're at different parts of the world. So I really appreciate folks who may be joining at night to dial into this session. So if you have any question for Elena, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll feature them from time to time as we go through the session. But we have a jam-packed agenda today. So as I introduce, Elena is the head of growth at Amplitude. She's also growth advisor to so many startups that when I look at her LinkedIn profile, I just lose count of how many. So Elena, I'm so honored to have you again here today. Would love to maybe just start with, you call yourself a growth hobbyist. So tell me a little bit about your career journey and how you get into the world of growth and product.
Yes, absolutely. Growth hobbyist is a little bit of a funny title, but growth is really my hobby, and it's my passion, it's my pastime, and it seems like the best way to describe myself. But growth has not been always the place that I've been at. I've actually started in data analytics, and I grew up to a leadership level running data science, business intelligence, business analytics, and data engineering teams. Growth is something that I started getting into only after Facebook prototyped their growth team. And that's something that when I was at SurveyMonkey, we decided to prototype as well. And I was given an opportunity to run it because growth is based on data. Who is better to run growth than somebody who already is doing all of the business strategic data analysis and running data-driven culture at the company? And that was my first step into growth. I first started growth in product management, so heavily focused on product acquisition loops, on retention, on monetization. And then I've expanded to growth marketing and performance marketing and how to stand up marketing-led growth models as well. I've always been in B2B. That's really been my niche to date, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. And after that, after I had a couple of roles in leadership of running growth on both marketing and product side, as well as analytics, I stepped into being more of a full-time advisor. And I take interim level engagements now. So with Amplitude, I'm their interim head of growth, which means I'm prototyping, really testing a growth function for them to help them understand how to best hire for the growth leader. And that's what I've done the same at Miro. I was their CMO at Miro, prototyping their marketing function, and Netlify, I was their interim head of growth as well. So my use case right now has really evolved away from a full-time position. And I started unlocking additional monetization use cases for myself through advising, interim level engagements, and even board seats.
Awesome. There's so much to unpack just in that little intro. You talk about B2B growth. You have led growth in multiple capacity from data science analytics to product to marketing, and your latest advising job. That's a lot of stuff that I want to make sure that we touch upon. And I just also want to quickly say hello to Bruno, joining us from Brazil, folks joining us from Israel, Barcelona, Saudi Arabia, Chile, Germany. Yeah, definitely a very global crowd. So thank you so much for joining us. So Elena, let's start with the basics, right? Today, people are very excited to hear you talking about B2B growth. Well, let's just start from setting the stage. How do you define B2B growth, and how do you compare B2B growth to B2C growth? And what gets you so excited about this space?
So let's define growth first, because I don't think that there is such thing as a definition of B2B growth, of B2C growth. There's growth. What is growth? Growth is really your ability to answer in predictable, sustainable, and competitively defensible manner of how are you going to acquire customers, how are you going to retain customers, and how are you going to monetize customers. It's really, at the end of the day, is the distribution system for your product. So just like you have product and product market fit, where you need to answer a question or a problem from the market with your solution, you also need to have a distribution for your product. There's a lot of amazing products that have never seen success in building a business because they failed at building growth system or distribution system for themselves. There's also a lot of really terrible products that have incredible distribution systems that are widely successful as companies and are valued at multi-billion dollars valuations. So product is important. Obviously, you need to have product market fit, but growth is what creates a successful business out of your product. So my focus is, how do you acquire? How do you retain? How do you monetize? And building a competitively defensible, predictable, and sustainable ecosystem out of that.
Awesome. That's so exciting. So I just want to bring up one of your posts, one of my favorite posts, that you had this one-page summary that talks about the different growth models and levers that you briefly touch upon. Can you maybe give us a mini lecture of how companies of varying stages, from super mature company to early stage startup to somewhere in between hyper growth, unicorns or companies, how should they approach growth differently? And which levers would you use when, and how do you layer on top of different type of growth motion and levers?
Yeah, so let me explain a little bit of what this chart actually is meant to tell you and help you understand. As I just mentioned, there's growth levers: acquisition, monetization, retention. That's fairly clear. It's how you answer those questions, but how you answer those questions can be done through different motions. So most popular and widely adopted motions are product-led, marketing-led, and sales-led. So this is a 3x3 of how you can answer each lever with each motion. So what does it mean to be acquisition product-led? Well, you have to acquire users by leveraging your existing usage. So your users acquire other users for you. What does it mean to be sales-led when you're doing acquisition? Well, your salespeople outbound and find new users or find new buyers for your product, and so on and so forth. So there's many choices in which growth motion you want to apply to your growth levers. And you should always be thinking about, what is it that you're starting with? Where is it that you're going to be going? Because the question in this 3x3 is not which square is correct for you. The question is, this 3x3 is which question you should start with, and your destination goal should be owning all of these 9 squares, because most successful companies can do and apply and evolve their growth model and growth motions across every single product-led, marketing-led, and sales-led motion. And this, by the way, applies also to B2C and B2B, but in B2B, product-led has become this really big shiny thing. Everybody wants to be product-led. Product-led is not new. Product-led existed in B2C for decades. So we should just look at our B2C counterparts and say, you know what? You've been using your users to acquire other users. You have been self-serve monetizing. You have been triggering usage from existing usage. So how can we do that in B2B? Because we're finally in B2B, and this is what gets me excited about B2B. We're starting to shift our focus away from building for enterprise buyers. which are super important. And I appreciate having a strict budget and cost effectiveness in organization and the tooling that you choose for your employees to use. But we're finally starting to build for users in B2B. So product-led motion is actually starting to get unlocked for the first time as a common practice. It still existed in some products, in B2B products from the beginning. Even SurveyMonkey from the start was product-led. It didn't have any marketing or sales resources to begin with for the first 15 years. And this is where I learned a lot of it and why I got so interested in it. But product-led is finally penetrating every single sector, every single industry, every single segment of companies, which is why it's so exciting. And now in the downturn of the economy, it's the most cost-effective motion. You lean on your users and on your product to do all of the growth levers answers for you. And what can be more cost effective than self-serve monetization or your user acquiring another user for you?
Absolutely. I love the focus on product-led growth. We do have a question from the community. George was asking, because in your growth motion, there's the product-led side, there's the marketing side, there's the sales side. Where do you think, how can we, I guess, where does the growth team sit? And also strategically and practically, how do you make sure you have all three motion in place and they complement each other to bring out the best of, product-led growth?
This question very heavily depends on growth motions that you're applying against your growth model. So if you're very heavy product-led, your growth should sit in product. If you're heavy in the marketing-led, your growth should sit in marketing. Sales-led, your growth should be sitting close to marketing or sales, depending on where it makes sense to be. But one of the main important things to remember is that growth is evolution, not a revolution. You're not trying to disrupt the market with your growth model. You're trying to answer the problems and capture opportunities from the market with your growth model. So put the growth team where your motions are at. That growth team should be changing its structure in your organization as you expand across different motions. You might have multiple growth teams. You might have growth marketing team. You might have a growth product team sitting in separate teams and effectively forming a growth tribe. I don't think it's the question of the right location. I think it's the question of growth team being most effective in the growth motion that you're applying. And that's where the team should be sitting at.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we also have some question from the community around, can you maybe give us some examples for B2B, product-led growth? One example could be B2B healthcare, but if you have other examples to walk you through to bring it to life even more, the 3x3 metrics.
Healthcare, I don't do a lot of work in healthcare, so I'm going to give you a couple of examples just from my work and where I'm doing. Let's pick on Amplitude, just because that's where I'm in right now and my mind is at. Amplitude has a very robust freemium plan. That freemium plan is meant to lower cost of acquisition and the barrier to entry for orgs to start using Amplitude completely for free and start to see additional value that they can get out of the product and into their decision making. So it's very much acquisition is not solved by product-led because most of the acquisition comes from marketing and sales channels. Activation and engagement is solved by product-led because it's all self-serve and it's meant to generate the usage and showcase the value. And then monetization will be also, right now is only sales-led, but we're prototyping different motions against it as well. So that's a product that has been very heavy sales-led that is now transitioning, experimenting with additional growth motions, which is what everybody should be doing as they're hitting some of those scale challenges in order to continue that hyper growth rates. However, on the other side, you have some products like Miro. I was a CMO at Miro for a little bit under a year as an interim CMO. And Miro is product-led across all of the motions. They started as product-led across all of the motions. Your users invite other users to collaborate on whiteboards. You're monetized via self-serve because it's all self-serve packaging, and your retention is fully self-serve by triggers, both environmental and manufactured, that are then applied to your users. And then as they started scaling, they started adding marketing-led motion and sales-led motion on top of it to start doing product-led sales and expanding into enterprise markets. So there's companies that are starting in sales-led, moving down into product-led. That's one challenge. There's companies that are starting product-led, but you cannot just grow indefinitely in product-led or really any one of these motions and you expanding into other motions in order to really get the most out of your current product market fit.
Awesome. I really love those both examples. Amplitude, going from marketing and sales-led into product-led, as well as Miro going the other way around. So great example. Thank you so much for sharing, Elena. And every time I talk to you, I feel like I'm always inspired and learning something new. Because back in schools, I think a lot of what I learned, for example, I studied econ, was how to optimize funnels, right? Going from top of the funnel down to conversion. But you argue that building loops is actually more important and more powerful. And a lot of times we are also trying to grow at all costs, right? In all size of companies and startups, especially in current environment. But you think that is actually more important to find product market fit first, which is important in theory, but a lot of times I think founders and PMs in particular, we fall in love with our ideas very early, right? Like, and that's sometimes giving us the wrong kind of confirmation bias to like, hey, you need to really validate you do have the product market fit before you think about growth. So I'd like you to maybe walk us through the 5 laws of growth that you define, how you came up with them, and how we can apply them to day-to-day decision making.
These 5 laws of growth are the patterns that I'm seeing across every company that I'm talking to, every company I'm advising or have been an operator at. This is what separates companies that truly can succeed in not only establishing growth model, but also scaling their growth efforts, as well as companies that struggle and potentially stall their growth rates and have a hard time accelerating them or even maintaining them. So I'll walk with them one by one, spending just about 30 seconds on each. Why is my number one product market fit, then data, then growth? You cannot grow something that has not reached product market fit yet. Your product market fit is absolutely important because you need to validate the hypothesis that the problem that exists in the market can actually be solved by your product. Your product market fit cannot be determined just by your ability to acquire customers. So if you have a wait list of users getting into your product, I'm sorry, that does not give me the indication that you have product market fit. Product market fit is all about your ability to show retention. That not only you're able to sell them on the idea, but you're also able to retain them and continuously deliver value. Only then that you can actually start thinking about what is it going to mean to scale this product. Which, before you go into scaling motion, growth is all about scientific method of discovery of how is it best to distribute your product out there. So you need to collect the data on top of it first. You cannot just go from product market fit into growth efforts, because all they're going to be doing is applying your intuition to hopefully get some wins. However, intuition will only take you so far. And at product market fit, your intuition and perception and reality has to be exactly the same. That's how you get to product market fit. But as you start going into scaling stages, reality versus what your perception of reality starts to deviate. And you have a big gap of what you think needs to happen versus what actually needs to happen. So data here is absolutely important to hone in on your intuition, and growth will give you ability to connect your intuition to data and what's actually happening in the product, and hone in on the right decision making into how to grow those levers of acquisition, retention, monetization. So I feel that this order is must have. And if you jump before product market fit into growth, you may never reach product market fit because you're scaling and optimizing something that is not yet ready for that stage. If you're starting to do growth without having data platform figure it out, I'm sorry, you're making just guesses, and your guess power is just going to run out at some point because you cannot continue getting lucky. So find a way to scientifically find wins as opposed to finding a way to just guess on what the winning is going to be. That's the first rule, non-negotiable for me. Second rule, scale with frameworks, not hacking. Growth hacking is how growth came about. Growth used to be a not sexy work environment because why would you just want to work on optimizations and user journey versus innovate or feature release? And growth hacking has gotten the field a lot of attention, which I'm very thankful for. But growth hacking at the end of the day assumes that there is some sort of already huge misses that you're hacking, or there's some sort of quick wins that you can be getting. And that might be great at first. Growth hacking maybe is the way for you to start in your company to really bridge that perception and reality gap. But fundamentally, in order to continue that sustainable growth, you need frameworks. What do I mean by frameworks? Don't act on data points. This is one data point success. This is a second data point success. Think about scalable ways to find patterns and solve the problems on the pattern scale as opposed to on one-off scale. Because if you know your frameworks behind your growth in your business, then you can actually be successful in your ability to repeat them. And repeatability of it is super important because that's how you can continue scaling as opposed to getting your first traction. Third one, loops, not funnels. Funnels are great. Funnels are fantastic, but funnels at the end of the day have a big mouth at the top and then some outcome towards the bottom. And in order to continuously grow that outcome, which usually is monetization, towards the last step of your funnel, you need to pour more and more at the top in order to grow the monetization. So how do you pour more? It means more money, more channels, more resources, more tactics. And how much more can you possibly ask if you only, out of putting, let's say, X, you're only getting a portion of X back? Instead, flywheel concept or loop concept is a lot more lucrative. You put something in, it rotates through a flywheel system, and its output can be reinvested back into input. Now that is sustainable. So instead of having a leaky bucket or a leaky funnel that you constantly need more to pour on top, you need to focus on how can I turn my input through actions and steps in my product or in my process through the services into output that can be generated back into input. So for example, it can be users rotating in your loops. I acquire a user, they perform actions, they bring me more users. User acquisition loop, amazing. It can be dollars that rotating in your loops. I spend $100, let's say on LinkedIn advertisement, I get $500 in ROI back. I pay myself back $100. I reinvest $400 into more LinkedIn advertisements. So there can be dollars rotating it. There can be salespeople rotating in it. I hire a salesperson. I pay them, just say 100K. They generate 500K worth of revenue for me. I can hire 4 more salespeople. So figure out how in whichever product-led, marketing-led, or sales-led motion, do you have loops? Because loops are your engines. Engines is when they're going to keep your business going forward. Funnels are fuel. Fuel is great to maybe turbocharge your engine and to get your engine going, but fuel on its own is not a sustainable growth engine. So that's how I differentiate, and I try to always see what are sustainable loops that we have firing versus where do we just have fuels. And fuels are important. I don't want to rain on fuel parade because fuels is how loops get started. Fuels is a lot of times are part of the loops as well in order for them to function correctly, but really understand the semantics of your loops. And this is really what Reforge concept is all about. And I'm a huge believer in standing up loop-based growth models, not funnel-based growth models. Last two are more cultural. Growth is an evolution, not a revolution. You cannot make your company understand growth. You need to bring them on board and understand how they can participate in the growth practices. So think about it as a learning experience inside your company and evolve it as opposed to try to revolutionize it. Revolution just never sticks and it gets ejected by internal system. As well as the market, if you try to revolutionize your go-to-market as opposed to evolve it. And then the last one, the premise of growth. The premise of everything that I do and everything all of the companies and growth teams do is learn. Because only if you know what failure looks like do you know how to win. Only if you know how to learn will you know how to win. If you're just winning, you're getting lucky, and I commend you and applaud you for that. But how is it that you're going to be able to keep that going? So really embrace the failures, turn them into learnings. And I go as far as even setting percentage of initiatives that we have to fail as a growth team. So if we have test experimentation roadmap, 50% of experiments have to fail. Why? So we're actually pushing our knowledge forward. So we're learning from our failures so we can create more predictable winnings in the future. Otherwise, you're starting to over optimize for winnings, and then that creates very diminishing returns really quickly.
I love that. There's so much gems, and just that I think it really resonates with our audience as well. Arts thinks that loops are your engine. Awesome, really smart summary. Funnels are fuels. I like the liquid bucket analogy as well. You don't want to just keep putting things in and not getting much, but you want to actually start the flywheel and reinvest. I like how you emphasize on not just single data points, but looking at patterns, thinking about things in a systematic way. Last but not least, I love the embrace failure part and how you can actually operationalize failure as a way to learn by allowing it up to 50%. Like failure is not an experiment is not fail if you learn something from it. So I love the cultural norms that you're establishing with this 5 laws of growth. All right, we are, time just fly by so quickly. I do want to touch upon a couple of other questions, especially around our career growth and how we can potentially accelerate our career, like how we're looking at growth. So the first question I had is, a lot of folks might be interested in becoming a growth PM. How do you find such opportunity? Is that something, do you have to become a PM first, then you become a growth PM, or how do you get opportunity to work in this space?
Majority of growth PMs don't come even from product management altogether. They actually come from engineering, from data analytics, even from finance, or even from sales. The goal of the PM and growth PM, there's 4 specializations, I think, in product management altogether. First one is innovation PM. Innovation PM is going to think about the second horizon and innovating on your product. Second one and most common one is core PMing. I have my use cases and I'm building features for those use cases. That's where I would say 80 to 90% of all PM jobs are out there are for core PM. The third one is infrastructure PM. It's a scalability backend. So how am I actually going to be able to scale with the product and make sure that everything is firing correctly and moving fast in the backend? And then the last one is a growth one. I'm not building anything new. I'm not releasing any features. I'm taking what's already there and I'm going to blow up distribution of it. So how do you get to growth PM? You need to know data very well because you need to find opportunities for increased distribution, and you need to have customer centricity. You need to understand the customer value problem and be able to address it. The best way to get into growth PMing is to be in the company where you are the customer of the product. That's the easiest way, because then you can actually relate to the customer right away because you are the customer. And then if you have your superpowers and data, off you go. The last one is obviously in the right environment. Not every single company is ready or at the stage to invest into growth. So if you're going to go into growth PMing, find a company that is already bought into the concept so there's a right environment for your growth.
Awesome. I love that advice. So in some of your recent posts, which I absolutely love, you talk about how to grow your career, like how you grow a product. Obviously, you have a lot of experience and you share a lot about how to drive growth. Tell us a little bit more about how can we apply maybe some of the similar principles into growing our career.
Absolutely. So remember, again, growth is acquisition, retention, monetization. My question to you is, what is your product? Your product is your brain and its ability to solve problems. That's what we're selling out there at the end of the day. So how do you acquire companies to get engaged with you? Most of us wait for market to come to us. We're waiting for a recruiter to reach out or for somebody to notice us. If you're growing your product and you want to increase your acquisition, would you just wait for customers to find you? Probably not. You doing outbound, you marketing your product out there, you talking about it on all of the platforms. Are you doing yourself the same favor that you're doing to the product in order to increase your brand awareness and in order to increase your acquisition potential? I highly recommend for you to invest into it as early as possible. It comes maybe from speaking at the conferences, posting on LinkedIn, writing a blog, participating in networking in communities, but increase your reach, be proactive about it. The second one is retention. What is your value metric? What is it that you actually add to a company? What is your superpower? Your superpower is something that you're really good at and you absolutely love doing it. There's lots of things that you're good at that you hate doing. There's also lots of things that you love to do that you're really terrible at. So hone in on your superpower and make sure that you exercise it at the company at all times. The only way to progress in your role is to continuously apply superpowers on daily or weekly bases and not get distracted by vanity metrics of emailing, of chatting, or doing things that you are not learning from and you're not honing on your superpowers. So understand your value metric and exercise it at the company religiously, because that's going to be the key to your success and overall career growth. And the last one is monetization. Everybody starts in the same monetization use case, full-time job. And that's fantastic. Few of us branch out into becoming CEOs, starting their own business, or in freelancing. And that's a different monetization use case, which works for some people, may not work for others. But pressure test whether you are in the correct monetization use case for your career. There's multiple of them that exist. There can be a monetization use case where it's a progression use case. I want to progress to a certain role, and I need a full-time position in order to progress to that role, and my promotions are my grades, so to speak, for job well done. There's a repeated again use case. After I progress to a certain role, many of us want to start from scratch and do it all over again from the high level position and show that we're not a data point, we're a pattern. And that's more of a repeated use case, which you also will probably need a full-time role for. But afterwards, how many times are you going to repeat it over and over again? You might want to branch out to different use cases like social good, applying your skills towards making an impact in the world, or more of a lifestyle use case where you're saying, I've achieved a lot of things at work and now I want to prioritize other things. I'm in very much a lifestyle use case where I love my work, but I'm doing advising most of the time because I have other things in life like my kids, my family, my fitness that I want to prioritize at the moment and focus on. So just double check that you're in the correct use case all the time. So as you're optimizing for it, your monetization model also matches it.
I love it. I love it. Every piece of it, actually, from the acquisition. I think it resonated with a lot of folks as well. Like Alice said, gray advice, comparing customer acquisition to employer acquisition by building your brand awareness, putting yourself out there, focusing on your superpower as your retention strategy, right? And then last but not least, monetization based on different use case. Elena, I think a lot of our LinkedIn community loves your advice, a goal of a session, such golden insight. I think, thank you for your clarity on what it takes to be a growth PM. Golden nugget every 10 seconds. I think this is the best one so far. Thank you, Arjun. And thank you for very
insights per minute. Insights per minute is my value metric. I recommend you to trying out that one too.
That's a great one. That's not a vanity metric. That's a real true north metric, right? So, Elena, thank you so much for joining us today. We do, for every session, have a lightning round of conversation at the end to close out the session. So please answer in 60 seconds or less. Are you ready for the challenge? Junro.
Ready.
All right. So what is your favorite product currently? What makes you like it so much?
I'm going to name three because I cannot pick one. Number one, Miro. Miro has changed the way I ideate and how I come up with my frameworks, and I do all of my work in Miro. Number two, Krisp. It's a noise cancellation software that allowed me to work from anywhere and feel confident while I'm doing all of these remote work and remote sessions, which I'm on Krisp even right now with my dog barking out there that you cannot hear. And number three, Amplitude. even when I grew up in data at SurveyMonkey, I would have never imagined that there's going to be such a self-serve ability in analytics that can be so easily implemented. And I think that makes a data analyst out of every single person. And that is a superpower we should bank on.
That's awesome. I need to check out Krisp because I live in this highway that people might even hear background noise. So that's a great recommendation. Second question, who has been the most influential product leader that you aspire to or have influenced your career?
I have two. One is my manager at SurveyMonkey, Selena Tabakawala. She was a co-founder of Evite and then president at SurveyMonkey. I've learned so much from her, and she's been an instrumental part of my journey. And then number two, Brian Balfour, who's the CEO of Reforge. I've always looked up to him. I still do. And I try to mimic everything that he does to make myself a better person.
That's awesome. Love Reforge. You have so much to share from there and with the people as well. Last but not least, what is one final advice you want to give folks on the session? Like, how can they learn more about growth, your work? Yeah.
Learn from others. You don't need to reinvent things. Listen, read a lot, scroll through things, read what other people are saying. Don't reinvent things. Innovate on what has already been discovered. And really leveraging other people's insights, opinions, or patterns is something that I take very seriously because I don't want to spin my wheels if something has already been done. And I want to focus my brain power on the things where I can truly add value or take a different angle on.
That's awesome. I love that advice. You don't have to repeat the learning. You can live forward, with what others have already learned. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Elena, for joining us. So where can folks stay in touch with you and follow your great work?
I've been investing in LinkedIn quite a bit. So I post a lot of my learnings and a lot of my frameworks there. So follow me, connect with me, engage with me. But I appreciate a good argument, a good disagreement, or a good point that you can make. And I best easily found there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today, everywhere else in the world. So thank you. And yes, the session will be recorded at the same link that you're seeing right now. And every Wednesday, we send out a recap of our previous session. So Elena's session will be recapped and sent out in our newsletter on Wednesday. So make sure you subscribe. All the links are in the event description. Make sure you check out. And thank you so much, everyone, for your time and attention. And thank you again, Elena, for joining us. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for inviting
Bye.
me. Thank you for having me. Have a great one, everyone.
Bye.